Hi, I'm Elliot Williams.
And I'm Jasmine Burton. And here to talk with us today is Garrison Hayes, 2024 Webby Award winner for Best Content Creator, who's known for producing innovative short documentaries about Black history, faith, and politics. He currently lives in Nashville, but today's episode, we're taking it straight to the White House. Garrison, welcome to The Ask.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
And I love that Garrison Hayes is simultaneously like the blackest and whitest name I've ever heard, like in one. It's like literally the fusion of America in that.
That's so, no one's ever said that to me. I love it. That's amazing. That's hilarious.
I don't know if you saw the movie Jingle Jangle on
Actually,
Netflix.
I haven't. No,
you haven't.
Oh, wait. I have seen that.
The character is called Geronicus Jangle, which is like the combination of like old timey white magician and like the blackest name ever, which is Geronicus Jangle. So that's how I see. I've taken it. I'm sorry, Jasmine. This is all me. All me.
No, I love this part.
Proceed.
Aside from the fun introductions, let's get into the debate. One of the reasons that we're here to talk today, I think one of the main things that people were hoping for in this conversation was policy. And we heard a lot of it. To be honest, we heard about the housing shortage, bringing down the price of groceries, supporting small businesses, immigration, abortion, all of the things. Did you think that the candidates did a good job of really showcasing their policy agendas to people that may be undecided, to people that are determining whether or not they want to go out to the polls?
Well, it depends upon, in my opinion, what you say is a good job. I'd say that they both were effective at showing who they are and what they really believe about these issues. So Donald Trump is exceptionally self-centered. I think that is the most journalistic thing I can say about him. He's very interested in himself. And so he did a great job of talking about himself, talking about his grievances with different departments and different people and different issues. But there wasn't a lot of substantive policy talk from Trump last night. Similarly, however, I think that Kamala Harris, I don't think that she was particularly substantive either. I think she did a good job of introducing herself to the country, which was probably her main objective. Her very first answer was to talk about how she grew up in a middle-class home with small business owners as friends or second mothers. And so it kind of felt like she was really doing the work of humanizing herself. Mm-hmm. But I'll also say that I think we, especially as journalists and those of us who are particularly politically engaged, we actually get a little too eager for folks to talk wonky policy stuff on these big stages. Most Americans actually don't really care. I hate to say this, but it's kind of vibey, right? No. And I think that's a part of it.
And to go even further than that, even before you get to the policy debate, this question of has Kamala Harris done enough interviews? That's a Beltway reporter concern, not Joe Sixpack or Jane, I don't know, bottle of rosé.
Yeah.
The folks don't get as bent out of shape about that issue as journalists do. Now, journalists drive the debate. The media drives the debate. However, this grave sin of not sitting for interviews, which actually might have hurt the candidate's standing, depending on how they'd gone, were not. That whole thing wasn't in the Harris campaign's best interest, and that's sort of why they didn't and hemmed and hawed and dodged for as long as they did.
I totally agree on that. And I think we'll see a lot of analysis that will criticize Kamala Harris for not being more substantive or talking specific policy, or they'll maybe describe her as evading certain questions about her record. But I think for most Americans, she was spot on in the anecdotes that she gave and the ways in which she characterized the issues. I think it was effective communication. And so, yes, I think it was the kind of right tone. No, to answer your specific question about policy.
Who do you think won? If you had to say there was a winner or a loser in the debate.
I definitely think Donald Trump lost, in that I think the objective going in was to tie Kamala Harris to Biden, to really hammer her record as border czar, or the person kind of tasked with getting to the root cause issues. And I don't think he effectively did that in the first hour of the debate, right? I was taking notes throughout, and I thought later on in the debate he was much better at talking about that. But early on, it felt like he was a little all over the place. She was clearly getting under his skin, clearly baiting him. And I think her job was to get Donald Trump to look crazy and to look unhinged and to look out of control and emotional. And she did that very well in several kind of viral moments.
It's remarkable that someone could have been vice president of the United States for 3.5 years under a president whose popularity is underwater by a substantial amount and yet still come out of a debate as the voice of change and the future, and having made a compelling case for the departure from the past. She literally owns all of that stuff that Trump probably could have more successfully attacked. Yet somehow, through his own shooting him or peeing on his own shoes or whatever, through all of that, she still managed to come out quite victorious for a lot of the reasons you're saying right there.
It is really remarkable. I mean, to your point, Kamala Harris isn't like the greatest debater. She's no young prime Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. And yet she was able to really handle herself. I don't know if I'm talking to two lawyers here, but I know I'm talking to at least one.
You're talking to two.
I'm talking to two. I thought I was. And like,
you get a discount on the third one.
Well, my wife is the third one. Like, so
why is she here?
She should be here. Why
are we doing this podcast with her?
She's a much better interview. Let me tell you. Like, let me just say, she's much better than I am. Lawyers are really good at dismantling and kind of like doing the jujitsu kind of like switching the momentum, and she did that. I think that is really the story of this debate, and being married to a person who used to be a former prosecutor. It makes a lot of sense. I that gets done to me all the time. Like I want to talk about this thing, and Simone's like, no, we're talking about this other thing, and so she did that very well.
I feel like for me, watching the debate, I went in with the mindset that I need to stay focused. I need to analyze what each of the candidates is saying. I need to see how it will impact me as a voter. And I did exactly what the rest of Americans did, which was get distracted by all the wild things Donald Trump was saying. And I promised myself I wouldn't do it, but somehow I still found myself on that wagon. And I feel like the memes afterwards reflected that he was out of pocket. Like, to your point, Kamala did succeed in making him seem unhinged, but he also, just naturally being himself, seemed that way, on his own. He said that Kamala allows transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. I've never heard anything like that. It was hide your cats, hide your dogs, Haitian immigrants are eating them.
And that was in response to a question about fracking, is when he went to the transgender surgery point.
Right, like how did he even get there?
Right. I mean, we know how he got there, right? Like she did a good, and I think this is kind of also reflective of the prep. I think the things where she is most vulnerable, she would do her best to answer it in a way that, allowed her to kind of get that offensive momentum. Hey, I'm the only person who's like prosecuted international crimes and that kind of thing. Like, she's able to kind of move forward in her own way, but then she would tag on this like rally thing or the you got a bunch of money from your dad thing at the end of her answer, which then allowed or it kind of like forced or baited Trump into responding to that as opposed to responding to, say, fracking. So it was really strategic. Like, she has been clear that she wanted to ban fracking. So there's this opportunity to make her seem like she's a flip-flopper. Well, she kind of answers in the way that she wants for the public to see her answer. And then at the end of that, she kind of tags on this like dig at Trump, and he just can't help but take the bait. And so instead of drilling her on this maybe change in perspective or change in policy approach, he's now running down the rabbit hole talking about his crowd sizes. And so it was really well executed.
The only one where he scored a point, but it was buried in a whole lot of nonsense, was on Afghanistan, which is probably her biggest vulnerability. And the line, and remember, these debates aren't, even, sort of push back on you, Jasmine, a little bit about the policy and substance. Going back to 1960, the Kennedy-Nixon debate, they've never been about policy and substance. They've been about how you present on air. If I were to ask you what are the most memorable moments in American political debate history, they're not policy back and forth. It's Ronald Reagan saying, there you go again, or I will not exploit my opponent's youth and inexperience. I mean, we remember the zingers, not anything about the policy. But on Afghanistan, the one thing he says, which is a zinger, is they are bad at firing people. They oversaw this whole mess in Afghanistan and didn't fire anybody as a result. Number one, it gets back to his strength, which was as a reality TV star. Mm-hmm. And number two, it pointed out a failing of the administration. Yet somehow the dude still managed to just keep talking and step on his own, probably the only one kill shot he had of the night. Really remarkable.
What do you guys think were some of the most memorable zingers? I personally think this debate will go down, in history as some of the things that have the most impact said that were very jarring. What do you think, Garrison, were some of the most powerful zingers to you that you're going to remember moving forward?
I'm definitely going to remember the way she talked about his criminal record and the timing of that. I can't quote it back to you, but I remember her really going meet the Grams on him, I love
that reference.
What's funny is that on our call just before this, we were talking, actually Jasmine had already gotten off. We were talking about Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl, and we said, is he going to do meet the Grams? There's literally no artistic merit to it if you decouple it from the fact that it's his vicious burn on Drake. And would they do that at the Super Bowl? So is he going to go full meet the Grams?
Oh, I hope he does, because it's such a depressing song. Right? Like, how crazy would it be to sing that, to perform that at the Super Bowl? That's nuts. It's psychotic. Yeah, I'd love for him to do it. I'd love it. But Kamala kind of did that. She was like, you're liable for sexual assault. You are going, your next court appearance is for your 34 conviction sentencing. Like she just kind of like went point by point by point, and it really made him look like a criminal. I don't know. It's like when Kendrick's like, you lied about you lied. It was really cool. It was really kind of interesting to watch her do that.
Jasmine, what about you? Zinger moment, takeaway.
I've already kind of said it, but to me, it was when he was talking about Haitian immigrants eating cats and dogs. I thought that was absolutely out of pocket and absurd. But the other part to me was when, in the beginning, when she walked up to him and said, let's have a good debate. And he just barely responded, didn't give her any language. Like, the visual of her physically walking across the whole stage to shake his hand is probably the part that's going to sting in my mind the most.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. So, and I think the interesting thing about cats and dogs is that it's a flub. It's a gaffe. It's not a zinger or memorable one-liner a la Sir, You're No Jack Kennedy or one of those. So that's a memorable one. Two, it was hard to find one sort of line in the zinger sense that we think of, but I think crowd size as a topic, because it was chess. It was literally, it had to have been prepared by her team to get under his skin. And it did. And he went there and totally stepped on, I think this might have even been in response to a question about immigration, and he just stepped on again, another gimme of a point against her on an issue that she owns.
Yeah, it's a really good and easy issue to kind of pin her. I think she did a great job, to your point about immigration. I thought she did a really good job, better in the debate than she did in her interview with CNN with Dana Bash. I think she did a good job of talking about Trump's kind of killing of their bill to solve that kind of issue, or to at least help ameliorate the kind of issue there. And she kind of said this line that sticks with me, where she was like, he'd rather run on a problem than provide a solution, or something to that effect. And so I thought she did a really good job kind of holding the American people's hands to say, like, these are the series of events that got us here, and Trump is directly responsible. I do want to give one more deep cut zinger that I was thinking about this morning. Trump said, I'm talking now. Like, apparently, Vice President Kamala Harris was over there kind of like saying something during one of his answers. And he had this snap moment, which was, it was almost a little jarring how he kind of like snapped in and said, I'm talking now. And said, I think after that, he kind of followed it up with like, does that sound familiar?
That was kind of an interesting moment.
Yeah.
He also kept referring to Joe Biden as her boss. which
Right.
was, I felt, I mean, I guess, yes, he is the president and she's the vice president, but that did feel like, I don't know, a little mini dagger to try to get
we're all about the daggers in the American political debate, though. I mean, you do you, man. But
even going so far to say that he secretly hates her. This is that Biden secretly hates the vice president is something. That's an incredible little thing to say.
Right.
Yeah, it's all of the above. And I heard someone saying this the other day or yesterday, this morning. It's all blurred, but this idea that it all makes sense. Trump's whole oeuvre makes sense if you accept that he exists in sort of a Benny Johnson and Charlie Kirk right-wing manosphere on the internet, where if you say Springfield, it's happening in Springfield, they're eating geese and dogs and so on, and people nod along and say, oh yeah, that's happening in Springfield, because that is a big issue in this pocket of the right-leaning internet, but not anywhere else. And he sort of, if the standard was Trump rally, then he crushed it. It was an effective Trump rally. The problem is that the only people who come to Trump rallies are people who are sort of plugged into the right-wingosphere and people who are already deep in the tank for Trump. But in terms of winning anyone over, particularly on immigration to the economy, not much there.
To your point, I actually watched the debate in Atlanta at a debate watch party put on by Revolt. And they had Black Republicans and Black Democrats and independents in the room. And so I got this really kind of interesting opportunity to watch the way that some of diehard Trumpers, MAGA people, were really responding in real time. And they started off really excited. But over time, I could see that enthusiasm kind of dying down as it was becoming obvious that he was just off message for kind of that middle of the road voter. And I talked to some of them afterward, asking them, what did you think? And I could really tell that they were struggling to kind of spin it and reframe it as a positive thing, because there were so many points that he just, when you're talking to your friend, that inside joke hits. But when you try to repeat it in front of kind of a larger group of people who aren't plugged into all the little details of your humor, it just doesn't hit the same way. And I think they were really feeling that at the end of the debate last night.
I completely agree. And something else that was resonating with me at the end of the debate that I personally think was extremely powerful is when Kamala Harris was discussing the number of registered Republicans that have now supported and outwardly endorsed Kamala Harris. Something that I thought was particularly powerful at the DNC was when Adam Kinzinger came and spoke, because he's someone that we've kind of viewed as a strong Republican coming to the Democratic side and saying, hey, we cannot vote for Donald Trump and allow his policies to move forward. I mean, she even had 2 former Donald Trump staffers invited to the debate as her guests. And to me, really showcasing the number of Republicans that, should be voting with their party that are actually doing the opposite is extremely powerful as well.
Yeah.
And now that we've talked about the debate,
have we what did we experience last night? What dogs and cats. The best thing, I'm sorry. Sorry. The last thing about the dogs and cats thing is that if you are in the right-wing manosphere and are receptive to this as of yet unproven allegation of Haitian immigrants eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, it's about cats and geese. He threw in dogs randomly last night, which was, or at the time of the debate, which is also striking, that beyond a baseless or at least unsubstantiated allegation right now, he sort of took it even further, when in reality the only person with a credible rumor of having eaten dog in the American political system right now is Robert F. Kennedy Jr., one of Trump's main supporters. There was an open question as to, was it a dog? Was it a goat? I don't know. And I feel like when you have to answer the question of whether the carcass you're holding up is a dog or a goat, you're probably losing that day's news cycle. I think it's just not that good.
It's not good. It's not good. I actually asked one of his supporters afterward about that particular point. I said, "Is this important to the election?" And she didn't answer directly, but she did pull up a CNN article that I've yet to be able to find on my own from August that said that some neighbor found some person boiling a cat, and I haven't been able to find it. But it just seems so bizarre. Okay, can I be honest? It just seems so bizarre in this moment to be talking about that, and then to build an entire kind of portion of your debate performance around it.
To me, everything we are currently talking about right now is so bizarre. I keep asking myself, like, are we in a simulation? Is this real life? Like, all of the talking points, even in this conversation, in the debate, like, I still can't wrap my brain around the fact that this is really what we are discussing. Okay, I do feel like I'd be remiss if we didn't discuss the fact that you are a content creator, an award-winning one at that. And I feel like, this election, content creators have been pivotal in getting people out to vote, getting people registered to vote, getting people excited about the election, discussing candidates' platforms, bringing the information to the daily American and the average American in a digestible, fun, and interesting way. I guess that's kind of a basic question. I was going to say, what made you want to do content creation to get this information out there? But I don't like that question. Essentially, how do you envision content creators further kind of influencing voter engagement and also shaping public opinion in this election? Like, how crucial is you all's role?
Yeah, so I kind of occupy this really unique space in that I am a content creator. I started this work in 2021, really just talking about history and the books that I was reading and tying it to current events. But eventually I joined the Mother Jones newsroom as a correspondent. And so now I am a correspondent in a newsroom, which means that I am kind of like a capital J journalist and a capital CC content creator.
And a capital B Black person.
And thank you.
Oh, I'm going to die on that hill of the lowercase, but I probably shouldn't say that on
Wait, no, don't say that. Don't say that.
I know.
Don't say it.
Look, we all have one black card revoked thing. I'm sure. I know Jasmine Burton does.
I do.
That's what is it? I'm very curious. What is yours?
Let's all end our careers with Black America right now. Just go. Jasmine, you're next.
Mine is terrible. I think coleslaw is disgusting. I don't understand why it's added to anything. It lacks flavor. I don't know who invented it.
Okay.
All right. Garrison, how will you be canceled by Black people? What can you say?
I habitually mess up the lyrics to rap songs that everyone knows. That's my
oh my God. Yeah,
it's really, really a letdown. I know the song, I think.
Do you though?
But I don't. No.
I don't. I mean,
Elliot, what's yours? Oh, I guess you already gave yours.
I already did.
Capital B. That's
it's not the hill I'm going to die on.
Okay, good. Because honestly, it's so necessary. And I'm a big fan of the capital B. I love correcting people with the capital B. It's kind of like a point of pride for me. So I'm into that.
You're here for that capital. You're here for that capital.
Okay, so now that we've gotten all our capitals out of the way, I will say that I think the role of content creators is really important. First of all, I want to say that much of this debate is really rooted in a kind of protectionist, kind of like turf war kind of thing that's happening between like traditional media and what is truly new media. Many of the content creators who I know are actually relying on journalistic institutions like the New York Times or CNN or MSNBC or Fox or whoever it is. Those folks are kind of going out and doing the reporting, and then content creators are more or less amplifying, repurposing that reporting to kind of get that information out to the masses. And I think that's really important, especially in this like super fragmented media environment where I don't, watch CNN every day. I don't catch MSNBC, and I am a paid subscriber to several publications, but I'm not able to keep up with all of their reporting. And so when I see a content creator take some of that reporting and present it, and maybe they present their own opinion with it as well, I think that's a good thing. I think it's healthy in many ways. And so I just kind of think that's an important kind of place to comment on. But we know that there are so many people on these platforms, and this is where many people, TikTok is where so many young people especially are getting their information. And if you aren't there, and if you don't have representatives and folks who are putting information out to help engage and inform the public, you're going to lose. And so it was exciting to see so many content creators at the DNC specifically. And it's been really, really encouraging to see new content creators kind of start sharing information that feels relevant and important to them. And the last thing I'll say, as a Black journalist, right, there aren't many of us out there. There is certainly not representative. And so much of the information that I'm trying to aggregate and collect and share and distribute is really with Black people in mind. And so many newsrooms are not doing that. It's important to say that. And that's me speaking as a straight Black man, but I can't imagine how many Black women are underserved in our media environment. How many folks from the queer community are underserved, right? And I have a good friend, Carlos, who shares the news in Spanish. How many of the people in those communities are underserved? And so that's a long answer, but content creators are important, and the beef and the criticism is kind of trash and short-sighted, in my opinion.
Here's a question for you. So obviously content creation generally in the form of whatever platform, social media outlets, newsletters, whatever it may be, is better suited, I think it's fair to say, to modern attention spans, right? There's no question that people consume information differently than the heyday of television news or cable news or whatever else. But how does one police against the risk of mis or disinformation? I know you get this question a lot, and I'll tell you candidly, my college roommate is big into thinking TikTok is the way of the future, because eventually, if enough voices are out there and talking and putting stuff, eventually, if you aggregate it all, truth will reign. It's like, yeah, it's nonsense, because a lot of people are putting nonsense online. So tell me about that relationship with the unfiltered rawness that is something that we could use more of in the dissemination of information, but also the risk and managing it.
Yeah. So I think there are kind of two things that popped out for me in that question. One is around attention span. So I've kind of been on the internet, as we all, but I've been like making videos on the internet for long enough to know that there's this interesting kind of oscillating, rise and fall of short attention spans. You guys remember Vine from a few years ago, where people were terrified because I think it was 6 seconds. And folks were like, oh, is it just 6 seconds now? That's all I have, or some short amount of time to get, my message out or to say a thing. That's where the world is going. And then we've seen like periods where YouTube is like really, and the long form content is like really the thing. I think about a guy named FD Signifier who just dropped a video about the Kendrick and Drake beef. And I think it's 3 hours long and has millions of views. And that's not unique to him. There are plenty of long form essayists who are making videos that are hours long, and folks are plugged in. And so I think there's kind of an ebb and flow, a rise and fall with attention spans and how people are engaging information. And it's just really important for us to present that information in a way that like keeps people locked in. I think that's a skill that can be developed, and it's necessary. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing, to your point about how people are getting their information, I think the biggest threat here is, one, the rise of AI. And kind of maybe that predates AI is this idea of the algorithm. So algorithms are really messing us up, in my opinion, in that I might think like your friend that the kind of hive mind of TikTok content creators will help us reach the truth. But the reality is that there are people who maybe disagree with me when I talk about the history of race and racism in this country, and they will make a stitch or they'll make some type of video about what I've said. But more than likely, the people who really like what I say won't see that video. It's more than likely the people who will see that video are folks who already agree with the person who's disagreeing with me. And so it's the echo chamber that has been accelerated and technologized in a way that almost makes it inevitable that there are parts of maybe truth or parts of the conversation, at the very least the discourse, that we won't see. And I think that's the real kind of that's the real difficulty. And so I've started to encourage people to train their algorithm. I don't train the algorithm on my main account, but I do have a second account where I only consume like Christian nationalist content. I only consume conservative content because I need to be able to go to a place where I can see the way folks are talking about this issue from a different perspective. For me, it's not necessarily to like, oh, well, maybe they have a point. For me, it's like, I don't want to miss out on the way a significant portion of this country is thinking about this issue or this topic. I want to stay informed.
Or the language that people use.
Totally.
Think about the terms, and Jasmine and I have talked about this too. Think about the terms used in an in-group in whatever community, whether it's like, I'm just going to use it like a controversial word, abortionist. Is that term really only appears among a segment of the right, but people just throw it around and use it. Now, you could go into common conversation and say, well, his wife is an abortionist or something like that. People might look at you like, wait, is this 4chan, dude? Like what?
Yeah.
But that's just people in their bubble. And there's a lingua franca, in every sort of pocket of the internet and the kinds of ones you're talking about too, Garrison.
Yeah, precisely.
That's what you just brought is the part that scares me so much, is that there are portions of news, information, or media that some people will never see, like the whole alt-right side of Twitter. I've always wondered, how people build these stereotypes against Black people, thinking that Black people are violent, thinking all of these things. And then you go and see alt-right Twitter, and what's streamed on their side is, the 1 in a million instance in where a Black person is being violent against a white person. But they're seeing those videos continuously, which is shaping their mindset against us, when in fact, it's not the truth. The whole concept of social media being able to control what you see is mind-boggling to me. And you're smart enough to train yourself against that algorithm, but so many people don't know that. And that's the part that's disheartening.
No, I think you're right. And I think platforms like Twitter have kind of pulled back the veil on that a bit, in that once Elon Musk took over, so much of the stuff that existed on a side of Twitter, and it was always there, right? It's not new. It was always there. But suddenly the kind of safeguards and the ways in which they kind of trained their kind of content moderation, AI or whatever the case may be, that stuff is gone. And so now I'm seeing Benny Johnson, and I'm seeing, End Wokeness, and I'm seeing these folks that I had never wanted to engage with. I either muted those accounts or blocked those accounts or whatever the case may be. And now suddenly the apparatus for kind of staying away from that stuff is gone. Which kind of, I think, should inspire us to find ways to either kind of, like in my case, sequester it to like a specific kind of account, or find ways to kind of engage it and hopefully dismantle it.
I've thought about it a lot in the last couple of years. I had a verified account years ago that expired, or whatever was taken away at a certain point. Now it's not, and just the nature of, one, the promotion of my own material, but two, the kinds of things that I see from accounts that are the change in the discourse on the forum is just different. And this isn't me whining about feeling like I'm entitled to have my voice be amplified over others. That's not it at all. It's just literally the computer programming is so different right now in terms of the kinds of things that, and I can literally post a picture of like the bananas sitting on my kitchen counter, be like, oh my God, you commie left-wing DEI hire. It's like literally just boom, 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 one after the other. It's bonkers.
Right.
Yeah. It really, really is.
Pardon me, not commie, it's socialist, not commie. But,
right. My mistake.
You gotta get your
silly me.
Well, Marxist is the new slur. Marxist is the new socialist. So you gotta get ready for that one on the greatest hits.
Yeah. I had the distinct privilege of having Carl with a K as my middle name. So that's been fun.
That's like one step above Adolf as your middle name, dude. Like, literally you can't top that.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for joining us. Before I let you go, something that makes this podcast unique is that it's called The Ask. And at the end, we ask our guests to essentially give an ask to listeners. So much the news kind of bombards you with information. They're like, this is happening, democracy is ending, now go about your day. But this actually gives people a way to get involved, recommendations for how they can just be a part of the process. And so my question to you is, what is your ask for people that are going to be listening to this episode?
Oh my goodness, that's a really, really good question.
Ask. It's a good ask, not a question.
It's a good ask. Yeah,
right?
You're right.
Back
You're
that
right.
ask up.
Let's be consistent here. Just swing through the ball. Great ask.
There you go. There you go. Great ask.
I think I actually really believe in this, and I think this news cycle, or this election cycle, I'm sorry, has really kind of brought this to the fore for me. I think people need to pay for the news, and if I could like really encourage you to pay for something, I'd say find a local paper or publication and pay for it. Maybe it's your local public television. Become like a $5 a month sponsor or whatever it is. Pay for news. Pay a couple bucks, $10, whatever it is, but pay for it. And it's because there are so many things happening in this country that really, really matter that have nothing to do with Trump, have nothing to do with Biden. I mean, they have everything to do with everything, right? But will not have Trump or Biden or Harris's name in it. It won't be anything related to the federal government. It will be very, very local. Here's a quick example. In Georgia, they are changing the election certification rules. They've changed them actually already, making it so that a single person can throw the entirety of the results of Georgia's election into question and halt the process. And it will very likely be an issue this November. Now, it's also likely that you don't know about that, but maybe if you're listening to this podcast, you're really, really engaged in the process and you do know about that. We only know about that because a local reporter was in the committee room, in the hearing. A local reporter was there live tweeting it, and then they went out and they wrote the thing and it got picked up. And now here we are talking about it on this platform. Local reporting is so important because there's so many little things that are more or less a mystery to the rest of us if it wasn't for journalists who are on the ground. So go pay for it and support it. It makes it easier and makes it possible.
And the great point behind all that is don't take for granted that when you get the news for free. I think a lot of folks, I was talking to my dad about this at one point, which is like, I don't like going to, whether it was the Wall Street Journal or whatever else, because they make me pay to read their product. And it's like, well, people are producing that. There is a workforce. And if you're using the local news example, there are people in Birmingham, Alabama, or wherever it might be, putting that newspaper together for free in a way. Anyway.
I think it's important. And can I just shout out a few that I care about? This is hilarious. Capital B is a newsroom that is about Black issues. They have rural reporters that I have a lot of I don't want to kind of play favorites here, but they have great reporters who are going out covering kind of deep cut, in the weeds, local issues that affect Black people. And their newsroom is really, really smart. Highly recommend supporting them. They're also a nonprofit newsroom. Another nonprofit newsroom is the one that I'm a part of, Mother Jones. We have we have a magazine that I highly recommend you check out and support our reporting as well. We are an investigative reporting newsroom, and so a lot of deep dive stuff that helps to uncover the truth. And so please go out and subscribe to Mother Jones. And then the last that I'll say is Axios. They're a bit bigger, but they have a lot of local kind of bureaus. I want to say that might not be the right term, but they do local reporting. There's one here in Nashville that I support. I'm a kind of a subscriber for them locally because they're covering local issues. I mean, we can have our issues, we can have our takes and our problems with like big Axios. That's fine. But the local reporters are just reporting on what's happening locally. And that is really, really important to me as a person who wants to know what's going on in my community. So those are just a few. Find someone or some organization that's local or covers an issue that you really care about, like the Black community or investigations, and go support them. That's my ask.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was absolutely amazing. I hope that everyone tunes in and listens.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, if they're hearing you, Jasmine, they've already tuned in and listened. So really, thank you for making it this deep into our meditation on all things dog eating in Springfield.
Oh my gosh.
And Big B Black.
I know, in capital letters, baby.
What?
This episode of The Ask was brought to you by the Raven Group, a progressive public affairs firm with offices in Washington, New York City, El Paso, Cleveland, Los Angeles, and Oakland. To find out more about the company and its commitment to powering good work, please visit ravengroup.com. You can learn more about The Ask at our homepage, theaskpod.com. You can also follow us on social media at theask_podcast on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. And if you really like what you hear, and we hope you do, please subscribe, rate, and review at Apple Podcasts. We'll be with you again soon.